Hi there, and welcome to the Plugged In Show. I'm Paul Acey. This fall, the streaming service Hulu released a documentary called Social Studies. It documents the online lives of a diverse group of Los Angeles teens, and they uncovered some fascinating and honestly disturbing findings. Emily Chow watched the series and blogged about it on our website. We'll be talking with her about the show specifically, but we'll also dive into the broader subject of social media and teens as well. And then we'll turn our attention to Netflix. Just in time for Christmas, that streaming service has released a movie called Mary about the mother of Jesus. It's already generated plenty of controversy online because of its Israeli cast, but at Plugged In, we're far more interested in what the story itself might have to say. It promises to be a fun episode, especially since we're joined by three very fun people. Emily Chow, Adam Holtz, and Plugged In's very own social media guy, Tim Ritz. Hey, guys.
Hey.
All right, so...
Hey.
So I wanted to ask you guys, this is sort of off the topic of what we're dealing with today, but I really wanted to know, what movie do you unapologetically love that most everybody else hates? Tim, we're going to start with you because it's your very first time. We're just going to throw you in the hot seat right away.
Yeah, well, Paul, you and I yesterday had a conversation about a certain movie that I feel like I need to protect because apparently people think it's bad, and I can't believe people think it's bad. And that would be Cars 2.
Oh my
I unironically love Cars 2, but apparently a lot of people don't.
There
I
are
love...
reasons for that.
I know why
There are
people don't
reasons
like
for
it, but it wasn't like a bad movie.
It was good. It was,
Like
mean,
I
come
know
on.
why people don't like it, but I don't think that makes it bad.
It's when you think about the entire, catalog of Pixar, it is bad.
Okay, no, fair. If you're only comparing to the catalog of Pixar, then yeah, it's kind of a dud. But if
Terrible.
you're comparing to like all animated movies, it's pretty high up, I've seen way more duds out of like I don't even know the studios. A bunch of unknown studios that I've had to watch their movies for Plugged Ins.
Listen, I'm not saying this is Disney's Picasso.
All
Okay.
right. All
What
right.
I am saying, it's a good time. If you haven't watched Cars 2 in a long time, let me just recommend that you watch Cars 2. Just because it is an underrated gem, and
my goodness.
I watched it probably like 2 months ago, honestly. I come out of all the Cars movies,
How
I think
old are you, Tim?
old enough. All right. I am
Really, Paul? Are you going to go ageist on him now?
Okay, but hold on. You're making fun of him for how old he is, but were you a child when the movie came out? Because that makes a difference.
It does make a difference.
I definitely was young. I actually don't remember when it came out. I really
Like-
don't. But I feel like I've watched it on my own accord since college more than I should have.
Okay.
And it's fun. It's a fun time for sure.
Pachow. Okay, Emily, we're going to go for you.
Okay. I don't think this is a movie that everybody hates necessarily. I think it's more of just that it's a little unknown. And I'm gonna go with Duck Soup.
Oh,
See, you know what it is.
I know what it is. That's a great movie. Way better
I
than
know
Cars
what it
2.
is.
I don't know what it is, so I can't defend it. I'm sorry.
Is it?
Brothers. Brothers.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's Marx Brothers,
Tim's
right?
first time,
admittedly,
Paul.
it's probably
You have
been
to be
since
this
college
mean.
since I've seen it, but yeah, it's Marx Brothers, and it's slapstick comedy, and it's black and white. Like it's super goofy. I think that people who do see it tend to enjoy it because it's like of a different era. But I think that, like I said, I just don't think a lot of people have actually seen it, and that's why. So you say Duck Soup, and they give you
What is that? What is that?
So yeah, I think that's my pick.
It's a good pick, and everybody should watch Duck Soup. It's pretty funny. All right, Adam, what you got?
Well, the year was 1997. It was a special year. It was 2 years before Y2K, and I hadn't even started buying bottled water yet. That
I
the
wasn't born
year-
yet.
Right. It was a special
Oh,
year
I always
because
forget how young you are.
We're interrupting Adam's story. All right, go ahead.
Sorry, Adam.
I'm talking. My favorite Batman movie came out.
Your
Batman
favorite
and
Batman
Robin.
movie. What?
Okay, no, that's a lie.
Oh
That's a
my
lie.
goodness.
No, this is a movie that is universally despised.
Yep.
by everyone.
It is. No,
And
I'm with
saw
you.
it. I saw it and I thought, that was pretty fun. I like that. I mean,
So I
it's
was a
George Clooney as
child
Batman.
when it
How
came
wrong
out,
could
and
you
I
go?
did enjoy it quite a bit as a child.
And even you
seeing
knew.
it.
Okay,
But
okay.
I did not realize
So
how bad it
you're
was.
saying I have childish.
Yes.
That's not bad.
No. When
Batman and Robin.
by the
It's
time I became
George
a teenager, I
Clooney.
knew
Arnold
it wasn't
Schwarzenegger
great.
is in it.
This is true.
Arnold is in it. How bad could it be?
How bad could it be?
I mean,
Pretty bad, actually.
We could also go with every movie Arnold Schwarzenegger ever made as a
Oh,
whole category.
Jingle All the Way wasn't bad. That's when I remember
It was
watching
terrible.
as a kid.
Wasn't he in one where he was a tooth fairy or something like that? Or no, that was Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
Maybe.
Never
Yeah,
mind.
you're thinking of
Yeah. Oh
The Rock.
man. So that's probably another question for another time.
Yeah. All right.
Your favorite movie starring a former wrestler?
That list could go on.
All right.
Yeah. All right,
so
Paul.
my pick is actually going to be one that I know that you actually share a love for too, Adam. The Cat
Last
from
Spy?
Outer Space.
You know what? I almost said the
The
cat,
Cat
from Outer
Outer
Space.
Space. Oh my goodness.
So great.
It was the Cars 2 of its day.
It's so
Okay.
terrible.
It was. Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
It was released in like 1978 or something, right before Star Wars come out. And
Yep.
and it was just about
Yep.
this cat
77.
from outer space. He could talk, but only
It's
if
from
he
outer
wore
space.
a special collar that kind of had this glisten gleam about it. It
Hmm.
was kind of cool, but he could only talk if he had the collar. So there were bad guys that wanted to take the collar. I don't even remember why, but I remember loving it, like actually standing
Loved it.
up in the
Loved
up
And
in the
this is where
theaters and cheering.
Pixar's creators got their idea for the talking dog collars and up.
Maybe so. Maybe they love the movie
It's
too.
possible.
Yeah, but seriously, Cat from Outer Space.
It's possible.
It is an
Oh.
overlooked classic, almost as good as The Last Jedi.
I can't even rebuttal.
I can't with Adam's like glare. Like he is shooting daggers your way, man. If looks could kill.
So I
No,
don't.
it's all good. It's all good. No daggers.
I do not think that probably social studies is necessarily going to land on a list of favorite TV shows.
no. No.
But it is sort of an interesting show, right? We're talking a little bit about Hulu's Social Studies, which drills down in the online lives of a bunch of LA teens.
So
Emily, you watched the whole
Yeah.
show. Tim, you watched at least part of it. So, but Emily, we're going to start with you, and I
Yeah.
wanted to talk with you about what is the show about.
So, first of all, I feel like I need to give this disclaimer. This is not a show we are recommending at all.
At all.
At all.
Yeah.
Ton of content issues, but actually the fact that these content issues are occurring in real life is actually kind of scary. Like think Euphoria level content but in real life, you know? And that's what's so terrifying about this series, I think. And I think it based on the articles that I have seen written by a ton of people who have seen it, like everybody's just in shock. They're like, I had no idea this is how bad it was. I did not realize that this is what my kids are seeing online. I did not realize this is what my teens are doing online. Like parents are just in shock over what is happening in the world of teenagers. And so this documentary series, the kids that they're following, this is the first generation to grow up in a world with social media from the day they were born. From the day they were born, social media has existed. So they've literally lived their entire lives in the social media sphere. And that's kind of the gist of it.
So when you watched the first episode, Tim, were you equally as surprised and shocked as Emily was when she watched this series? Is that something that struck you as well?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So as we already joked, I was born in 2001. So while I am older than the kids in the show, I did experience a lot of the same things, maybe to a slightly lesser degree. All the social media apps that they're using, I used, I had accounts for, all this stuff. And I think it's really interesting. Where they chose to shoot was LA. And
Because that's where the director lives.
That's where the director
She
lives.
specifically chose the Palisades because it's it has it has a big high school there where kids from like 100 different zip codes attend school there.
Wow.
So it's a very diverse
yeah.
group of students from various different backgrounds and ethnic origins and whatnot.
Yeah. And so with that, all of the problems that are shown in the show are at its peak.
Yeah.
Genuinely. Like,
Right, because this is LA.
this is LA, and when you're talking about social media and you're talking about its effects on kids and them wanting to be famous or have influence, when you're shooting it in LA, of course,
Yeah.
pretty much every kid is going to want to be a social media influencer because they probably go to a coffee shop nearby and there's Jake Gyllenhaal. You know, like it's built in the culture of LA to want to be known, to want to be seen.
Yes.
And so some of it was still very like, oh, it's gotten worse even since when I was in high school.
Oh,
which
interesting.
was,
Well, like
a bit
yesterday.
ago. Yeah, exactly. Yesterday. Yeah. They just hired me right after high school, guys. I don't know what to tell you, but no. It was very interesting to see kind of the natural progression of where I kind of left it off being in high school a little bit of. I
That's
wasn't as
interesting.
shocked per se, just because I kind of lived it a little bit.
That's really interesting.
I would also just say, like, I don't feel like I was shocked. I felt like other parents were, but I feel like mine, and I think the reason I wasn't shocked is because of my job. It's because I work with Plugged In. I do a lot of research regarding social media trends and stuff for our weekly On the Radar segment. So it wasn't so much shocking to me as it was just like, it was confirmation of a very dark reality.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you talk about the show, you mentioned that you weren't necessarily shocked. It was sort of a progression for you, Tim. What do you think our parents who are listening right now, is there one thing that might shock them if they watched, which they shouldn't?
Probably. Okay, so like one thing that kept coming up, the reason I brought up the show Euphoria is because the teenagers themselves kept bringing up that show. They were like, yes, we want to live this life like we're in an episode of Euphoria. Like that is just their world where, one girl at one point, her and her friend are getting ready and she's like, oh, it's giving Euphoria vibes, and that is where kids are. That's what they are living. That's what they
At least kids in LA.
well, definitely kids in LA, but I mean, if you've got kids watching that show, and I mean, no, not just in LA. I think that LA, yes, is the extreme, but social media is the same everywhere. If you are a teenager online, you're still seeing the same things that these LA teens are seeing. You might have a slightly different filter. Like you might be, if you live in a more conservative place, you might be like, wow, that's a lot. And
Yeah.
you might even be inclined to turn it off because it's a lot. But I think that generally this is the world that teenagers live in. It's not just exclusive to LA or California even. It is exclusive to every single person who is online.
Adam, you have teens and you're actually living out in California. Would you concur with that? I mean, is that kind of the world that teens are living in now?
Yeah, I would say relative to Colorado, interestingly, and this is a sample size of one, right? Or two teens in one family. I would say that sex was a bigger thing in Colorado, and out here, everybody's on drugs. I mean, I don't say that ironically or sarcastically. My kids and I talk about drugs all the time. And
Which is very euphoric.
to the point that they don't even, like, I would say culturally, they don't even consider weed, marijuana, a drug. That doesn't even show up on the radar as something that we would consider drug use, right? I mean, it goes from that to ecstasy to harder stuff. And not that everybody's out, getting baked on meth all the time, but I have been pretty, not shocked, but I think surprised at the prevalence and the acceptance of drug use. And I think in my family, we just do our best to keep lines of communication open. Like, I'm glad that my kids even talk to me about this stuff, right? And one of my daughters has said, there's so many parties, and I always have to ask, what kind of a party is it? You know, is it a party where your mom and dad are going to be home and we're going to watch Pippi Longstocking? You know, a sleepover for like, you know, the innocent variety,
Right.
Where it's teens getting together and doing teen things. Or is it a drinking and drugs party? And she said most of them are drinking and drugs party. And
Man, oh man.
I was happy
Watching-
that she told me that.
Watching this
You know?
series would be confirmation of that. You know, they in the series, these kids gave they agreed to download screen recording technology so that the director could see what the kids are seeing at any given moment. And so there's a lot of footage of these teenagers at these parties, and yeah, everybody's drinking, everybody's smoking weed, everybody's taking pills, you know, and it boggles my mind that with the amount of fentanyl that we hear about that is laced into drugs, that any kid would even take that risk. But that is just, it makes me so scared for them, because I'm just like, it only takes one pill laced with just a little bit too much fentanyl and you're dead. Like, there's nothing they can do for you to resuscitate you if that happens. And, you know, there was a case in the show of a kid who, I can't remember if he overdosed. He overdosed at a party, and you know what his friends did? His friends took him. They didn't want to ruin the party, so they took him, dragged him a few blocks away, and then called 911.
Wow.
And got him in an ambulance. And of course, the kid was fine the next day in this particular case, you know, and he was, you know, posting on social media like, yeah, I survived an overdose. Like,
Oh my
he's so
goodness.
cool. And I'm just like, you could have literally died. Like, you got lucky because you got one of the pill. Like, you clearly didn't take quite enough to kill you, but like, you could have been dead. Your friends could have been dragging a corpse to
So-
the corner of the sidewalk, you know?
So when we're talking about some of these issues, is social media sort of aiding and abetting some of these habits?
Yep, because, and the kids actually, throughout the series, they really do, not all of the kids, but a lot of the kids, by participating in this, the longer they were being recorded, they recorded over the course of a school year.
The entire school year. That's interesting.
Yes. So as the school year progressed, a lot of the kids who were participating in this series kind of got to a point, like at the beginning, everybody was just kind of being performative. It was like, okay, I'm going to be really careful about what I scroll through on
They
social media.
wanted to be an influencer.
Yes, they wanted to be an influencer. They were very careful about what they posted, all that stuff. As the year progressed, they got more real with the director, and they started really opening up about all of the things that they see on social media and how it affects them. And I think a lot of those kids, they expressed, even, you know, early on in the series, they could express that, yeah, we know it's a problem, but no, we're not going to stop.
So, Tim, you probably know social media as well as anybody in this room, right? Because you work with it every day. Does any of that surprise you? Does it surprise you that kids are so communicative online, expressing so many things that their parents might be shocked about?
You know, part of it being my job, but then also part of it just me growing up during this time. Like, I'm not surprised. No, every kid, always, they want to be an adult as fast as humanly possible. They want to be independent. They want to be the king of their world as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So now what's happening is now every kid has a phone and a tablet connected to TikTok, Instagram, all these apps, right? And they're able to see what adults are doing, which is these crazy parties or overdosing or, you know, all these terrible things.
Right.
But, oh, my influencer guy that I watched, he does it. That looks like a ton of fun.
Yeah.
That's probably what life's all about. That's probably what it looks like to be an adult, is to go to a party and get drunk and
They
all
want to
this
imitate
stuff.
what they
Yeah,
see.
Exactly. They see that and they go, oh, that's what I need to do. That's what being a grown up
Wow.
is like. That's what I would kind of.
That's interesting.
I think it's part that, and then I think it's also part, oh, this guy's famous, this is what he's doing, that's what I need to do to become famous.
Yeah. Adam?
Well, I think too that as much as there are things that haven't changed as well, right? And I think that at the core level, our kids want to know that they are loved, right? And so social media has been a force multiplier on that, and you can find out quickly whether you have validation from your friends or not, whether they like your posts, but the core desire to be loved is not any different than it was a generation ago. And so on one hand, I want us to take the threat seriously. And on the other hand, I think as parents, what can we do? You know, as we often say on the Plugged In show, creating spaces where our kids know they can come to us. We were talking about parties the other night, and I told both my daughters, I said, I don't want you guys to go to a party and get drunk or get high or get in a compromised situation. And then I said, if that ever happens, I also don't want you to feel like you can't call us and say, hey, I need help.
Right.
I need you to come get me. And so we could have a parenting philosophy conversation about whether that's the right or the wrong thing. But I wanted them to know that they don't have to fear me being angry with them if they make a bad choice. And I think so often the parent-child relationship gets fragmented and the kids feel like they have to live in secrecy. And I'm not, I'm not an idiot. I know my teens have probably seen some things that would shock me. But I hope that as we keep those lines of communication open and even just talking about, well, why would somebody behave like that? You know, are you trying to fit in? Are you trying to deal with your emotions? And we've talked about the different reasons that somebody would make those choices. Just straight up peer pressure, right? I mean, that existed back in the day and it's still there.
I think that, speaking into what you just said about their desires to be loved, in one way, this is how it's different now, is that social media gives them a place where they can be loved by friends and family, yes, but actually by strangers. And especially for young women, for young teen girls, and this comes up a lot in the show, these girls realize that if they post a picture of their face, a couple of their friends will like it and be like, oh, you're adorable. And then if they post a picture showing any part of their body, like, it could just be from the waist up and fully clothed, they will start getting the creep show. Oh, you're so beautiful. You have such a great body. And all the creepy stuff that you don't want your teenage daughter to get, the kind of attention you don't want them to get from young men, but even older men too, and it's just, and these girls, because they seek to be loved, they're like, yeah, but this is what gets me the attention I'm seeking. So I'm going to keep posting this stuff because I want to be loved. I want to be liked. And then you take that same mindset and you go to one of those parties. And one of the girls said it in the show. She's like, yeah, people go to parties to hook up. Flat out. That's, everybody has somebody that they're trying to hook up with at those parties. And so, there's no filter between what I see online is not what it's like in real life,
Right,
and,
right.
There was a deep dive in one of the episodes into the over-sexualization of people online and how that translates into teenagers being like, oh, I have to be into this really extreme sexual stuff that borderlines on abuse and violence in order to be loved.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous. And every single one of those girls was like they did a hand raising thing. How many of you have felt pressure to do this? Every one of them raised their hands.
So when we're talking about this from a parent's point of view, I mean, probably it's not realistic for parents to say, okay, you guys aren't dealing with social media at all.
No, because as they say in the show, how do you quit social media without people forgetting who you are?
That's interesting. So what advice would you all have for parents who are, I think what you were talking about, Adam, that real impulse to love your kids, to make sure that they know that they are loved. That's a really key component. But do you have any other advice for how you can walk through this crazy social media world with your kids, where you don't necessarily shut off the power to them, but you navigate it healthily?
Yeah, totally. I think a major point to talk about with your kids is generally, why would they want a public account? I think that is kind of the basis for a lot of conversations. And when you watch the documentary, when you read things online, all these kids are trying to get so many views and so many likes. Why? Like,
Right.
start from there. Don't come, scared straight about social media. Just why do you want that? Why do you want that kind of attention? Like, why do you want a comment with a guy that doesn't have a profile picture saying really creepy things about, like, why do you want that? Like,
Right.
what's the motivation behind that? And I would try my best to just point them, hey, have social media. Like, I love social media. I love reels. I love sending reels to my friends, but why would you have your account public? Like, why, what's the desire behind that? And kind of go from there with that conversation.
That's a great
Because,
idea.
as a kid and you're trying to become an adult faster, you want to come to it on your own terms. You
Yeah.
want to make the decision, oh, I don't need this, right?
Yeah.
I'm too big for
Yeah.
that, right? And so that helped me a lot, even maybe not social media wise, but other bad decisions in my life. My parents kind of directed me, well, why do you want that? Why is
Yeah.
this a big thing? And let them kind of turn it in their brain to see, oh, it's really not that big of a deal.
And one of the things that I love about that is the why question. It forces an answer, right? It sort of forces that dialogue where you can have this open and honest conversation about something that's super, super important for so many families today. Thank you guys so much.
Oh, what a cold winter's night. Papa, are the children all snug in their beds?
Whew, finally. You know how they get when they eat too many sugar plums before bedtime. But now not a creature stirring.
Not even a mouse?
Oh, not since the exterminator came. I must say, Mama, your kerchief looks quite fetching tonight.
Why, thank you. And your cap looks mighty fine, too.
Oh, well, I guess it's time to... Wait, what's that out on the lawn?
It sounds like a clatter.
Oh, it's on the roof now. What could it be?
Well, don't just sit there. Tear open the shutters and throw up the
I
sash.
just fixed the sash, Mama. You don't want me to... Wait, did you hear that? Something just slid down the chimney.
Why, look at that. It's our very own copy of Becoming a Screen-Savvy Family by the Plugged In team.
Well, isn't that something? How to do? That's just what we wanted for Christmas. There's no better resource to help keep your family safe from the perils of entertainment and technology.
Technology? Like that newfangled water pump we installed out back?
Oh, sure. It's too bad that not everybody has a right jolly old elf on their rooftops to give 'em their own copies.
Oh, that's no problem, Papa. All people need to do is send Plugged In a gift of any amount to get their very own copy. Or get an extra book as a gift for friends. Just check out the show notes to find out how.
Well, that's some wonderful advice right there, Mama. Even though I have no idea what show notes are. Well, thanks, and God bless us, everyone.
Wrong story.
Oh.
One of the coolest things about the best Christmas pageant ever was how it gave some depth to Mary. I loved how they treated the character Mary in this, because they really made it look more real, more tangible. She looked, the character who was sort of playing this character of Mary felt scared and vulnerable. And that's a nice thing to see when so often we see these pictures of Mary as this very calm, cool, beautiful person. My guess is the Netflix movie Mary is going a little bit farther along that track. Would you say? Tell us a little
Roughly.
bit about it. Yeah.
It's this story is about the birth of Christ, but it purely focuses on the perspective of Joseph and Mary, obviously mostly Mary, but it's what you just said about her actually appearing scared and vulnerable. That's definitely conveyed, I think, in this movie. But it goes a little bit further. It actually starts from before Mary was born. So it's talking. We get a little bit of backstory into her parents. This is not necessarily part of the Bible, but it is considered part of.
Just sort of folklore, right? Sort of biblical folklore. Would that
I would
be
say
fair?
extra biblical texts.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
So like we're introduced to her parents, and we learned that her mother was barren, so her father went into the desert for 40 days and prayed and came back, and she was able to conceive because Gabriel had visited her. And then 9 months later Mary's born, and sometime after that, when she's, still a child, Gabriel returns, and her parents know that to be the sign that now Mary's going to be dedicated to the temple. And so then Mary moves into the temple with all these other young girls, and they are all servants of the Lord. And, Mary is a very compassionate person in this portrayal. She's a very compassionate person. She's very generous. She really wants to be a servant to the Lord and to the Lord's people. And then she meets Joseph, and Joseph goes to her father's house and is like, I want to marry your daughter, and before they're able to be married, of course, she is visited by Gabriel and becomes pregnant.
You bet. And we know the story.
Yes,
really.
and we know the story from there.
Yeah.
More or less, it's pretty similar to the Bible from that point.
From that point.
And similar. I do say similar because there are definitely still other discrepancies.
Yeah, from what I understand, the movie Mary, they did a lot of research, right?
It sounds like they did their homework. Yeah, I mean,
they dug into a lot of these stories. They had consultations from everyone, from Catholic priests to Baptist pastors to Muslims. Is that right? So would it be fair to say that this is not like purely a Christian story?
I think so. Because even in just like, we don't really see like Mary and Joseph really praying a lot. We don't really, even like the birth of Christ, like we're not really, after Jesus is born, the star appears in the sky, but like, I don't know, it didn't really feel like anything was about Christ at all.
That's
it
interesting.
really felt like it was just hyper focused on Mary and Joseph, and I mean, that in and of itself felt a little odd to me, but I get it also. I mean, like, he was a baby. But yeah, it almost deified his parents, especially Mary.
Interesting.
It almost deified her. There is a point in the movie where this soldier is like, he is convinced that Mary has some kind of supernatural power. This is before she even meets Joseph. And, he like threatens to kill her and stuff. And then there's other moments after she becomes pregnant where like, the Jewish leaders find out that she's pregnant and they're just like, well, you broke your vows. And so she's kicked out of the temple and they want to stone her. And like, that is terrifying.
Oh,
like,
my
you can
goodness.
really, when I talk about like the vulnerability and the fear, like that's where it's portrayed, is when literally she's being held down and they're all looking at Joseph and they're like, here, cast the first stone. And she's like,
Wow.
like, are you going to do it? And of course, obviously he doesn't, but yeah, it's intense. It has some definite moments of intensity.
That's really interesting because when you're looking at this from sort of a parenting point of view, I guess I would have two questions for you. Number one, do you think like Christian parents could learn something if they watch this movie as a family? Number two, are there just content issues that would make it kind of questionable to do? Outside sort of that spirituality where you're sort of going off script, if you will, are there other content issues that parents need to be aware of?
There's quite a bit of violence, actually. There's a scene where, that Roman soldier I mentioned, so he works for Herod directly. So he's part of the group of soldiers, the regiment of soldiers that go to Bethlehem to kill all the baby boys. And so in that scene, they're going through the streets of Bethlehem, and these parents are all trying to protect their children, so they're just getting slaughtered along with their children.
Goodness, man.
They kidnap all of the newborn babies and take them to Herod, which is, one of its divergences from the Bible. But there's a scene just after that where they find out where Mary and Joseph specifically were, and they follow them to this farmhouse, and the man and woman inside hide Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus up in their rafters, trying to protect them. But of course the soldiers find them, and then they all fight, and the man and his wife are killed as they are trying to protect Mary and Joseph. And all the while the soldiers had set the entire place on fire.
Goodness.
So Mary and Joseph are trying to get out of this house while fighting the Roman soldiers and trying not to get burned alive.
Oh my goodness.
And all the while carrying a baby, an infant.
Oh,
So
man.
yeah, it's it's definitely got those moments of intensity that
Yeah.
certainly, I think that it's a PG-13 film. I think that that is a good starting point. I don't think children under the age of 13 necessarily need to watch this.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't sound like the best Christmas pageant ever. That's for sure.
Definitely not. And I also just think that, going into this, you were asking if there's anything parents could learn. Because of the divergences from the Bible, I think you would have to go in with it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
You just
yeah.
need to know, your kids would really need to know their Bible before watching this movie, because everything else is not necessarily scripture, so it's a little speculative.
Right. Yeah, and it does sound like, I think that's really good advice, to be sort of rooted in Scripture before you engage with stories like this. So you know what the Bible says. You know what might be true in this story, what reflects the Bible, and what is just wrong.
Well, I mean, and it's Hollywood. Hollywood does this with any, recreation of the Bible. They always, they're like, well, maybe this is what could have happened.
Right.
And, from that perspective, it is an interesting film, an entertaining film. But yeah, you just got to know your stuff before you watch it. That way you don't accidentally believe something to be true that maybe isn't true.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I would say that our conclusion would really be, it's an interesting movie, but parents, be very cautious.
Yes.
Thanks, Em. All right, and now it is time for my favorite section of the podcast. We are going to be playing a game, and this game is once again led by our very own Kennedy Unthank.
Hello.
Hello, nice of you to pop in. Let us explain the rules for those who do not know it, especially for Tim.
Yeah, so this is called Pop Rumble.
See, I always get it wrong on the title. I always think it's...
Well, honestly, I never remember it until right before it starts.
I feel like we need a sound effect where you're just going, Pop Rumble.
Pop Rumble!
There we go. I love it.
That's like channeling my inner Jason Momoa. And in this game, I am going to be giving each of you, out of a cup, a famous character from a TV show, movie, or video game. One whom you would preferably know. If you don't, let me know and I'll swap it out.
Yeah.
And they will be competing against one another in a series of challenges that I will also pull from a cup. Whoever wins the challenge will win the game. You, as your character, will have to explain why your personal character, who you have drawn, would do better in that contest than the other characters. Okay. This is a game based on the quality of your answers, not the quantity.
Yes.
So it's based on who is the most convincing.
Okay.
So, Emily, you cannot actually send Indiana Jones to hire somebody to do his job.
I still stand by that. I think it was a
my
valid
goodness.
argument. And
Okay.
I think that's exactly what Indiana Jones would have done. But alas, it was not my decision to make. It was Kennedy's.
Each of you will have 30 seconds to give your best argument. After each of you have gone, I will choose one of you to be the winner.
Alrighty.
Do you
Good.
win anything cool, or
You
just-
win
I keep hoping.
my gratification.
Yes. All right.
I've been waiting for that for so long. All right.
It's a hard thing to get.
It's only happened twice.
Because that's how many times we've played the game.
All right. Would anyone like the first draw?
Oh, I think Tim does.
Ooh,
So
yeah,
mean,
he
it's
looks
his
like
first
it.
time. I think
You
Paul should go
Tim.
first.
No,
because of
let's
that.
let Tim do it.
I'll do it. I'll be the sacrificial lamb. It's okay.
I have been pretty mean to Tim, actually.
Ooh, okay. All right.
What did you get?
I got Wolverine, so I
Oh,
feel
Wolverine.
pretty in a lot of situations.
That
doing
would
all
work
right.
good. Okay, here we go.
Here you go, Paul, across the table.
But which universe Wolverine?
That's up to him.
Po, Kung Fu Panda.
Nice.
I'm jealous. I'm not gonna lie.
And Emily?
Wait. There's too many. There we go. I got Optimus Prime.
Oh, that's
Come
a
on.
great one.
I don't know anything about Optimus
Unless it's like
Prime.
going grocery shopping.
I was
think
not
you're
a
okay.
Transformers fan. I am not a
Well,
Transformers
based on
fan.
the name of the movie, you know at least one thing he can do.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess.
All right.
He's the good guy, right?
If he's driving across country, you're
Isn't the other one like Megatron or something?
very good.
Okay,
I'm
so I
really-
know that much.
I'm really glad we haven't sent you to any Transformers movies. Okay,
All right, so we have Wolverine versus Poe versus Optimus Prime in the battle of most likely to be able to maintain a happy marriage?
Oh my gosh.
Does anyone
little
want to go
dark.
first?
It can't. Wolverine has a lot of trauma to work through, so I need to kind of parse
Okay,
through that a little
okay.
bit first.
I'll go ahead and go first.
All right, Paul, here you go.
Okay, so Poe would make a really good, successful husband in any sort of successful marriage because he's such a nice guy, and he always learns as time goes on what he needs to be doing better. He's kind to other people. He can defend the home if necessary. He's already had sort of this quasi-weird relationship with his mentor. They sort of act like an old married couple every once in a while.
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't mention anything about his dad. It was like a pretty important part of the movie. All right, Emily or Tim, who wants to go next?
I'll go. Okay. I'll give Tim a
They
little
both
bit more time.
They both
I'll be
look like
nice.
kids in a dentist office.
No, see, that never bothered me. I'd always just be like, yeah, get it over with.
Oh my goodness.
All right, ready? Go.
Okay, Optimus Prime would have a successful marriage because if he ever messes up, on his way home, he's a car, so he would just transform into a car and stop at the flower shop, get his wife some flowers, go to the candy shop, get her some chocolate, come home, make everything better. He would always make sure that her car had, he'd take it in for the oil changes, make sure it was filled with gas, that she would never be stranded. And if she was stranded, he could just come and get her.
That's good. That's hard to compete with.
These are the husbandly duties.
Was this
according
under
to
the
me.
assumption that Optimus Prime is dating a human?
We don't get into that.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it that hard.
Crud.
All right, Tim.
All right.
Now is you can't back out of this any longer.
I can't. I really can't.
The reckoning is here.
You got it.
Ready? Go.
All right, so Wolverine, if he loves you, he will fight for you and die for you. There's so many X-Men comic lines where he has fought for those he's cared for most, including he's had a wife. Sadly, his wife was killed. So he actually did love her until she died, and even loved her after she died. He is kind of the ideal man, he's just so manly. He wouldn't get hurt. He can do all the construction projects in your home and not get hurt.
And he can slice the Thanksgiving turkey without even blinking.
Not even trying.
Yeah.
That's true. I would not want to get all that grease over his steel
Yeah, then it goes
bones.
back in. Yeah, it retracts back into your hand.
Oh, that would
Acne
be
would not be good on his hand.
totally unsanitary. Totally unsanitary.
Yeah, I can't see him eating any fried chicken. All right. Well, you all give pretty compelling arguments, some better than others.
He says that every single time.
You were very generous.
I'm a very generous judge, but it is all because only one of you can win, and I still want the other two to like me. And I gotta say, for creativity, I'm gonna give it to Emily.
Yeah.
Clear winner.
Yeah, I do think she won. I would like to argue.
Because I was surprised. That's what I like about this game, is that you can have unlikely characters and they can pull it out.
Yep.
I mean, who would have thought that Charlie Brown was going to win last time?
Well, exactly.
Everybody, I felt like that one was a given.
Well, thank you guys so much. This was, again, a lot of fun. And thank you, watchers and listeners, for watching and listening. And while you're at it, if you wanted to chime in, give us your own thoughts. Talk back to us. Let us know what you think. How do you engage with social media? How does it make you feel? Planning on watching Netflix's Mary? Let us know, appropriately enough, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can leave a message on the Plugged In Show homepage or write us an email at team@thepluggedinshow.com. And also, if you're so inclined, feel free to leave a review of the show wherever you get your podcasts. If it's a nice one, we just might read it on the air, like we are right now. One of our listeners wrote, "Grew up reading the online Plugged In reviews and respected their thoroughness and balance. Thought I'd try the podcast and started with episode 249, which is the one where Kennedy, you and I, and Brett talked about the Rings of Power.
Gandalf?
This show is completely beyond. These guys really dive into the reads with their reviews and show great care for God's truth and the medium of film. I would definitely not watch a movie without listening to their review first. Thanks for the hard work and trustworthy insight, and thank you for writing to us. That was very nice. So be sure to tune in next week when we will again do one of these nice little shows when we're talking actually about what makes a great Christmas movie and what doesn't. That's next on The Plugged In Show.